together, and we're seeing how well they imitate people based on gender. And we see kids are really sexist. That'll be fun. Yeah, and then we're also doing an undergrad. So that'll go well as well, because you know what they're like.
I don't think that's
It's a Christmas one and
I've been told. Oh yeah.
I already know what I'm getting my person.
I don't mean to be Oh yeah. I don't know what's happening.
Oh, I think Christmas, yes.
We're going to start in 2 minutes. Just before we do, those of you who have put your name down for casual voting place, we are supposed to reallocate, so please come to the front.
Honestly, I handed in that coursework. There's not that much to go through today, so should we take that out? I handed in that coursework with literally about half an hour.
I'm really hungry and I want to eat that.
Just get as much as you can, that's what I do. I had like 16 references, so I was happy with that. Yeah. I'm quite happy that I only ever say something about that'll be at least 5 marks. That'll be the references with 5 doesn't matter the rest of it. I'm going to honestly, I was going to go to Nero and get one, but I didn't have enough time. Why? I'd have a massive one.
All afterwards. No, I've got to
Why is it small? I think there's no one here. Like they just said that they've got a bunch of places they can knock like now and have these ones. So a second anyway.
Do people go up and still eat?
Yeah, there's like a few like a lull when I think it's a few minutes or something. So there's a chance to go up. I was gonna get so down like that. But they're all like 20 days. That's a little bit.
Did you know?
I would have thought that would be great. That would be great.
Please make your way to your seats. We're about to begin. Okay, so to begin with, notices to council. First off, House would like me to remind you that if you are speaking on a motion, please make sure you speak clearly into the mic there, adjust it as needed so that the recording and everyone can hear you. Secondly, you are being live streamed as at every council, so please watch your language. Thirdly, when you speak on a motion, please can you stand and say your name if you are able, and try and speak loudly and clearly so everyone can hear you. Please ensure that when you're speaking on the motion, when it comes to the debate side of things, please don't go on for too long. Try and limit yourself to 10-15 seconds, just 'cause that way it makes it easier for people to keep track of what's going on and we can have a swift council. And that is all I have at the moment, but thank you all for coming. Welcome along. If you have a voting place today, please make sure you are logged into that. I understand that some people had trouble last month, so to prevent that, I will give you, every time I say we shall now go to a motion, that is your cue to check that you are still logged in and you haven't been logged out, and I will give you all a moment to check that. On that note, those of you who aren't able to vote for such reasons, please make sure you do that before the results are displayed, otherwise your vote will not count. I'd like to remind you at this point that we have 38 voting places, just if you want to work out number of abstentions. Okay, and I will give you all a moment to just check that you are able to vote, and we will move swiftly on. Okay, first off, minutes of the previous meeting. This can go through by the show of green cards, and we'll go through unless anyone objects. So, those for, those against, any abstentions, those have gone through. As we go along, if you're new to council or still don't know how it was, I'm happy to explain everything as we go along, as I will at every council, so don't worry if you are new. Steering committee report. Those go through again with the green cards, so just hold in the air nice and clear for me. Those for, those against, any abstentions. Okay, so I'd like to now invite Raf to come up for the State of Union report and also announce the results of the NUS referendum.
Your dedication is always welcome and encouraged, but let's talk NUS. So the referendum occurred this week. We're voting closing at 12 p.m. today. I'll be honest, student knowledge of the NUS was low. As a result of being disaffiliated, I think, for the past 3 years, and the overturn of the student cohort, I think that's a natural result of that. And as this is understandable, myself and Johnny and Jack went around campus speaking to students, and it was disappointing to see a lack of knowledge, I will say that, on what the NUS does, even what it stands for. You know, I think students nowadays should be knowing that sort of thing, but who am I? Maybe students are less politicised, or the NUS generally has faded from memory in the northeast. Who knows? Either way, you only want to listen to me for one reason, so here's the result. So, students in Newcastle voted to remain out of the NUS. Do you want to know the exacts? Yeah? So, 52% to 48%. No, none of these Brexit connotation words. So yes, it was a 52% to 48%.
Is that for real?
Huh? Genuinely, there's no lying here.
Do we know the turnout?
Turnout, yes. First of all, most importantly, thank you to Emma and Scarlett, the two students who came forward to lead the register campaign. Genuinely well done. And as I said, you know, it's not the easiest thing to explain to students clearly, and I don't doubt you've had deadlines. So genuinely well done and thank you. The turnout did not hit the quorum, and the quorum was 5%. So it's not, for the turnout did not hit the quorum for the result to be binding. So it's going to go to NUSU's trustee board next week for the final decision. But when quorum isn't reached, the default would normally be to remain the status quo, and clearly the students have voted that way as well, even though it hasn't reached the 5%. And from the turnout, we can assume that there was a certain amount of apathy towards the NUS. That's all I'll say on that. If you want to talk to me about the NUS, go on, Izzy.
What's the exact turnout?
The exact turnout, go on.
We needed 1,336 to reach 5%, and we got 1,088.
So thank you to everyone who voted, genuinely, because it's important we vote on things like these. It's important people engage in student politics, and it is a shame we didn't have to hit that 5%. But if you did vote, thank you very much. That's the NUS. I'll talk about the Ed Farmer Memorial. We've been working very hard on that recently. I hope you're all aware and you've seen the postcards going around campus this week, raising awareness of Ed Farmer's death, following, of course, initiation 2 years ago. I hope you've all written a message, signed the postcards and handed them back in. If not, please do. They're available at SU reception. It is important. On Monday evening, starting at 5:30 p.m, outside the front of the SU, we'll be holding a memorial event for him. It will last no longer than half an hour. It will constitute speeches from friends and family, songs from students. Big up Ali and Karis, they're doing a song. And this is it, and it's going to be images of Ed onto the building, candle lighting, and this is full backing from the family. I want to stress that. And I also want to thank the support shown from across the university, actually, because various different departments have been incredibly helpful. And it's about getting across that Ed wasn't just an Agaric, he was a Newcastle student like all of us, with probably very similar goals or interests like ours, and just wanting to lead a normal student life. It's about coming together as a community and reflection, which I don't think we get to do as often as we should. And this isn't about forcing a message of binge drinking kills, because I think it's about more imploring people to take greater care, think twice about their actions, and look out for one another. And I'd expect, but more importantly hope, that every one of you will come on Monday evening, because I think this matters. Speaking about officers, about what we've been up to. Johnny ran a really successful feedback campaign called Shout Out. Got it? Get in. Which sort of mobilised course reps across campus and gathered some great ideas from students, and that's always incredibly useful to us as a union. And also he's worked to update the recap policy to stop lecturers releasing recordings just days before exams, which is a real win, I think. And any course reps in here who've engaged with the Shout Out campaign, thank you very much. Louise has continued with class media coverage with a run of great papers, as well as working on the 17th anniversary and a mammoth Christmas edition, which is coming. Massive shout out to NSR and NUTV as well for the fantastic coverage of Fight Night. Unbelievable. If you didn't see it, it was funny, it was professional, and I hope people saw my cameo at the beginning as well. Sophie's been working hard on organising her International Festival of Culture, Arts and Music. And she also went to Belfast to collect a union's award in the UK Town and Gown Award for community work against loads of different universities. So well done, and we've done all right there. Maggie, who's sadly not here with us, she's managed to work with the Sports Centre on a governance review, which may pave the way to a better offer to students. Jack and I have lobbied accommodation services to reduce the prices of rent in certain halls of residence, and we're eagerly waiting whether this is going to be accepted in 2 weeks' time. And I have to thank everyone's continued support and help from me towards organising the Ed Farmer Memorial, etc. It's been incredibly useful. Finally, I will finish off. I want to give a massive shout out to Nest. If you don't know about it, it's a student-led volunteering project that's changing the lives of refugees in the northeast for the better. They run sessions 7 days a week. I don't work 7 days a week. I don't think any of us ever work 7 days a week. They run sessions 7 days a week for the benefit of others, and they're genuinely inspirational, and I want to congratulate them on being runners-up at the Times Higher Education Awards last week in the Community Awards. So a quick round of applause for them. Amazing, amazing. And we can talk all about all we want about the importance of council and the changes it makes, which it undoubtedly does. And I'm thankful that you keep coming to this because it does matter. But I think it's also vital we recognise, praise and actively seek out the unbelievable work that students are doing and impact they're creating, and the opportunities for change that are going on outside these walls. Titles mean nothing if we're not using them for good, and without titles, I'm just essentially a man with a student card and a passion. So NEST is setting the bar incredibly high, and as a union, and as crucially as students, let's keep pushing ourselves. Let's do what we do in our respective roles in everyday lives to move up to that bar set by NEST. Have a good Christmas, enjoy this council, and see you next year for the next ones. Thank you very much.
Pass that as well with the green cards again, so just hold them in the air nice and clearly. Those for, those against, any abstentions. That has gone through. Okay, now on to general reports. These go through just as a block, so it's again with the green cards. Those for, those against, any abstentions. Okay. Okay, part-time officers' end of term reports. These as well just go through as a block. So green cards again at the ready. Those for, those against, any abstentions. Okay, sabbatical offers, end of term reports. Again, with the green cards, those for, those against, any abstentions. Okay, on to question and mandate from the sabbatical officers, if you'd like to come up. This is your opportunity to question the sabbatical team on all the work they've been doing since last council, or anything you generally want to know about what they do. You can ask any of them, anything related to their work. So just put up your hand. Oh yeah, if you guys would mind introducing us, Leah.
Johnny Hall, Education Officer.
Jack Green, Welfare and Equality Officer.
Louise Hall, Editor of the Courier.
Raf Marioni, President.
Any questions for anyone? Yep, at the back.
Hi. We didn't hit 5% of students voting in a pretty important referendum. 5% isn't much, it's a very, very small amount. What do you think could have been done to increase turnout, and actually there'll be a referendum in 3 years' time? What did you learn from that to kind of think, actually, we need to probably be hitting 5% of students voting in something that would genuinely affect students' lives either way? I don't know which one of you wants to answer that.
I'll just say, I think in terms of what we did do, I think, we had campaign leads as a students' union. We put out videos, we put out social media posts, we sent an email out to all students. I think we did a lot, which is one of the reasons why me personally, I'm a bit surprised and quite disappointed, because I think we actually, in the same way we do SAB elections, we did a whole lot. We did videos, we had campaign leads who were going out flyering, doing hustings. You yourself did a really great debate, which was put on social media. A lot happened, and I think it's a tough one. I think that because, as I said in my State of the Union, I think because students have, I was in first year when we first voted, and I've graduated now. So I think there's a whole cohort of students who've gone through the university life at Newcastle who haven't had any relationship with the NUS. And I think it's important to remember that there'll be a lot of students who genuinely don't care. And I think looking forward, it's about how we as a union, as officers and as students, enthuse the people around us to get involved in student politics. I think that's the root of the thing. You know, we can talk about doing more videos or doing further social media production, but I think it's actually the people around you, getting them enthused about student politics. So when it comes around in 3 years, people know about it, they know what it's doing, and they want to vote, even if they vote no or they vote yes. I think it's actually just disseminating that conversation more, I think, from my perspective. So.
Any other questions for any of the sabbatical officers or them as a team? Anybody? Okay, you may sit down. Okay, you get through that. But over to the part-time officers. Questions for the part-time officers, exactly as just now, except instead the sabbatical team, it's the PTOs.
I'm in. Okay, so if we'd just like to start by having the part-time officers introduce themselves.
I'm Charlotte Bolton, the Marginalised Genders Officer.
I'm Emily, I'm the Parents, Guardian and Carers part-time officer.
I'm Lauren, I'm LGBT.
I'm Chris, I'm Race Equality Officer.
I'm Grace, I'm Faith and Belief Officer.
I'm Adam Warner, Chair of Student Council.
Harris Crushy, Student Abilities Officer. Pablo, International Students Officer.
Jamie Cameron, Screening Officer.
Okay, so any questions of the part-time officer? If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand.
I would just say, don't all answer it. Maybe it's just one person answer it because there's a lot of you. But have you enjoyed yourselves, and what are you going to be doing next term? What do you want to be doing next term to change?
My best.
Who wants to do it?
Okay, so I think we've all had quite a lot of fun this term. It has been a little bit stressful in terms of like finding our feet and running campaigns for the first time. But they've all kind of paid off quite well, and that's good fun. And I think like, as a group, we're looking forward to running Liberation Month, possibly in March next year. So that's sort of our main focus for next term, that we're doing as a group rather than individual projects. And my favourite thing is my radio show, but that's just me.
Anyone else like that?
Like me and you, Adam, planning a little something on the chat about.
Want to go about that?
Yeah, should we go together? Let's do it. So, basically, sort of next semester when we both have more time, we were thinking of doing a sort of Democracy Week campaign, along with other sorts of, materials, I know, little seminars or lectures that people can talk to if they dare. And the idea was essentially sort of, helpfully trying to resolve some of the issues you mentioned in terms of low engagement. So trying a little strategy to turn that the other way, basically. And I might even write the unofficial guide to NUSU, which would make for great bedtime reading.
Encourage you all to read that. From my side, I'll be focused on how to write a motion, what a motion can actually do in terms of the ability and remit of council, and try and encourage more individuals, groups, societies to use motions to sort of advance their agenda or address any grievances that they may have, and come to council and we can have more of a debate on wider issues.
Do any other part-time officers like answer that?
Yeah, I'm starting, being involved in a trial of a toddler group. Once a week, it's going to be a 4-week trial, and there's going to be lots of little minions around, so it's going to be great. And then, obviously, if you've got kids, bring them, because then we can hopefully ultimately start a crash.
Any more questions for part-time officers? No? That's me done. Until next time.
Okay, now we're moving on to the motions, the main part of council. I would remind you at this time to please make sure you're still logged in and that you are all registered to vote and ready when we go over to a vote. I will give you a moment after I say that we go over to a vote just to double check that you haven't been signed out, but if you could do that now as I'm speaking, that would speed things up, and so it would be great. So, the first motion is a business motion. This motion aims to resolve that to update the Constitution so that the track changes in document are accepted. These changes are the idea that the new postgraduate sabbatical role should be a sabbatical trustee, like all the other sabbatical officers will be on the board of trustees for NUSU, and that the number of non-sabbatical trustees should be equal to the number of paid sabbatical trustees to remain legally compliant with the Charities Act. And so this means that an additional external trustee will add value to the board and provide sabbaticals with improved external advice, and so that's the logic behind adding them as well. And so the Constitution simply needs amending to reflect these changes, okay? This one simply goes through again with green cards. So if you have those ready, those for, those against, any abstentions, that has gone through. Okay. There are no constitutional motions for the council, so we go on straight over to ordinary motions. This first one is called Funding Free Menstrual Products Across Campus. So, Raf, would you like to come up to speak on that? You have 2 minutes.
Starting now? Yeah. First of all, massive thanks to Charlotte and Feminist Society, because I accept I'm a man and I'm not as educated on this thing. So as I should be. So thank you very much for seconding it. I really appreciate that. And if this does pass, then we're going to have a big dialogue on how we actually deliver this. So yeah, this was a big part of my manifesto, which I was elected on. As you can see from the notes, they are available in our student advice centre, but they are just for emergencies. They are not, for everyone to go for. They are just for emergencies and for those, whether that's financial, etc. So this isn't across the university. This is something that I think should be across the university. As I say in the Believes, these menstrual projects aren't a necessity. Aren't a luxury. They're a necessity. And Scotland have done it, and it's incredible. And I think it's going to help so many of their young people and live more affordably, more comfortably. Just not face the issues that actually they shouldn't have to. And I think as a university, as a civic university with a great cohort of students, and a university that's trying to do good in this country, we should be introducing this scheme. I've worked with the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, who's going to co-sponsor a paper with me, so I've got that backing. I've spoken to Bruce Baker, who's the president of the UCU, so I've got UCU's backing. I would really appreciate student backing, and if this passes, then let's have a big conversation on how we can deliver this and convince people, because it could be amazing. That's all I got. Any questions?
Yeah. Any questions for Rap? Just raise your hand. Anybody? Excellent. You can sit down, right? Right. I will take 3 on either side of the motion for this. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Yep, go on.
I'm Charlotte, so obviously I second the motion, so I support it. I don't think there's really much to say, other than it's a really good idea, and I think Newcastle University should be striving to be at the forefront of people offering free menstrual products for everyone who needs them. That's it.
Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Please raise your hand. No? Okay. Would anyone else like to speak for the motion? Yep, go on, Grace.
I think it's a great motion. I would find really hard to so against it. It just sends out a really positive message. Period poverty is a genuine issue, and I think that us addressing it as a community and support the university sends out a really good message to the students. And I think it's definitely the right direction we should be taking.
Okay. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone else like to speak for the motion for fun time? Yes, go.
Just to say that Charlotte consulted with the trans community through the LGBT Society, and we also approve and endorse this message in terms of language. We think it's really good in terms of that as well.
Brilliant. Okay, final chance to speak against the motion. Okay, we will now shall go to a vote. please make sure you are logged in and ready and able to vote. If you have any technical issues, please say that before the results are shown. This is an ordinary motion and so only requires a simple majority to pass. Is everybody ready? Please raise your hands if you aren't. I think got something. Okay. That one has passed. Okay. Moving on to our next ordinary motion. Motion entitled NUSU demands greater transparency and more regular information on Newcastle University's investment, including fossil fuel divestment. Jamie, would you like to come to the front to speak on this?
So a little while ago, NUSU passed a motion that called for the divestment from fossil fuels at Newcastle University. It had some success, quite successful, because the university basically agreed to partially divest. However, the issue is that the information released on this isn't as regular, as is useful to actually make sure if they're doing what they say. Based on the information I've seen, and I have actually seen different estimates, like are they counting all the companies, so on, but the number of, the number they actually have invested in fossil fuels has only increased. So I think it would be useful to the student body to see if we're being, I guess, paid attention to when it comes to our motions, and to have the full information that we can about this issue, is to ask the university to essentially pass out their information on this issue more regularly, so basically as soon as possible, because right now I've heard that working with the Fossil Free campaign, that although they might, I guess, write a review on their fossil fuels and how much they have invested, they won't necessarily have to release this information until much later, and obviously want it as soon as it occurs. That's basically the motion.
Okay. Any questions for Jamie? Show of hands. Anybody? Yep, go on.
So obviously you're asking for speedier, greater transparency and complete releases. Do you think there's a risk if they, every time a decision is made or there's new figures or whatever, and they release it immediately, do you think that runs the risk of producing incorrect information?
I don't think so. I mean, based on what I know, what they do is they produce one review on the issue per year, and then they, I guess, release it at their own leisure. Now, based on what I was told, I think they actually completed the most recent review actually a couple of months ago. I think it might have been in July, actually. But the issue is they don't plan on releasing this until February, I believe. So, as it were, they know what they think for a specific time frame. They research and everything. They just don't necessarily release that information, which should be accurate at that point, to the student body, and I think they should, basically.
Okay. Any further questions? Yep. Sorry, could you stand, please? And then just say your name.
Why, as a student body, do you need to know the investment decisions of Newcastle University?
Well, I mean, I guess I would say for anyone in this room who, you know, was really invested in that fossil free notion, and I think there must be quite a few people in this room. Well, I know I'm one of them. But it's just so that we know as a student body that they haven't just given their word and are following through on it, because from what we have seen so far, and in fact, unfortunately, the number the amount of capital invested in fossil fuels has only gone up. So basically, I think we need to put on a little bit of pressure, ask to know exactly what they're up to, and then essentially we'll be better represented, and we know that our emotions are actually being respected and that promises are being respected too.
Any other questions for Jamie? Yeah, go on, Raf.
Sorry, this is an interrogation. I apologise. I'm just intrigued. What do you think is a complete release of an investment portfolio?
So I would essentially just want to see, I guess, whatever report they release, as was mentioned earlier. But the issue is that what they functionally they invest their money in fossil fuels through these management companies. And the story goes, the university said, from now on we're only going to use companies that have signed up to this sort of green charter of sorts. Let's say they're putting their money in the right place. And then the university releases reports from those, I guess, firms. But we haven't seen all of them. We've only seen them for a couple of companies. So I think we're getting perhaps an incomplete view of the situation, and it's kind of hard to tell actually whether the university is making good on this promise or not. Sorry, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Cool.
Any other questions for Jamie? Okay, you may sit down, Jamie. Okay, over to debate. We will have 3 on either side of this motion. So, to begin, would anybody like to speak for the motion? Show of hands, anybody? Okay, would anybody like to speak against the... Stand up, please. Jamie, could you stand up, please?
So, I was really happy to see this motion come in. Essentially, I think fossil fuel investment is a really important issue. I mean, as we know, the climate isn't faring too well. I think it's up to us as students who want, you know, to live an active life. We want a university to be ethical, and we want it to follow up on its own promises, you know, be good for the environment. So I think it's quite a straightforward, simple motion, and it would press the university into releasing more information about this and keeping up to their promises. So I think it's great. You should vote for it.
Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone else like to speak for the motion? Yep, go on, Adam.
Hello, I'm Adam Lowry. I'm the school rep for SNES. So, to me, the most important part of this motion is it's about transparency. Basically, in my mind, a well-informed electorate is a powerful electorate. And from my experience, the university is quite bad at actually trumping the good things they do. So it's very possible they have done good and have actually managed to reduce the amount they've invested. So therefore, you know, they should release it. What have they got to lose? On the other hand, if they have actually failed to divest or remain at the same level, it's even more important that they release this information, because they did make a promise back in 2016 to freeze the investment and or reduce the investment, and therefore we as a student body need to hold them to account to their promises. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak against the motion? Anybody for the motion? Yep, go on.
I think you should vote for this motion because it's really important that the information that we get from the university is accurate and kind of out there as much as possible, because there is a real movement in a lot of universities, not just our own, to look at universities' investment in fossil fuels and their investment more generally. And especially at this university, there's that conversation's really opening up, although it's never really kind of gone away. And I think it's important to provide the best information that we can, so we can have a proper discussion about it, that we can have an informed discussion with the latest figures, so that people feel informed, because that's an important part. And I think a lot of the discussions that we often have as a union, can sometimes, when people don't really know, they don't feel and know up-to-date information, and they kind of fall apart. So I think just for the sort of sake of sort of responsible, sensible discussion, that you should vote for this motion.
anyone like to speak against the motion? Okay, we're now going to go to a vote. Please take this moment to check you are still logged in. Yep. And that motion has passed. Right, on to our next motion, another ordinary motion, a late notice one. Entitled, Does Council Know It's Christmas Time? This motion was proposed by Steering Committee. Adam, if you'd like to come up and speak on this for a full 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Adam Lowry again, and today I am representing the steering committee. So I apologise because I'm probably one of the most wooden and uncharismatic people who could be doing this. And also, I still have a bit of a cold hanging around, so I'm not exactly dripping with Christmas cheer, but I am dripping with other things. But enough about me. So I'd like to think everyone agrees that it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. And what is Christmas apart from a time of largesse and gluttony and excess? So in that spirit, I propose that all councillors tonight should receive extra free drink vouchers. Moreover, to ensure the efficient delivery of said vouchers, we propose that the chair of the council, dressed in suitably festive attire, i.e. the Santa Claus, take on this role. And in recognition of this noble deed, for the rest of the evening, you'll be known as Santa Baby. And finally, on behalf of the steering committee, I would just like to all wish you a Merry Christmas. Thank you. And I suppose, does anyone have any questions? Yes?
How many extra vouchers? Oh, sorry.
Santa, help. 15 extra.
Any other questions?
Yes?
I was just wondering, where'd you get your bow ties from?
Oh. Do you actually want the answer to this? Because it's fairly long. Okay. Well, I don't know. It could lapse into product placement. I'm not sure the rules about that, though. Anyway, I get them from a Swedish website called The Tie Room. They do a great array of different patterns. I highly recommend it.
Okay, any other questions on the motion? Yeah, go.
Does council know it's Hanukkah?
Oh.
Even more drinking. Yes.
Any further questions?
Do we have a Santa costume? Is there a Santa costume?
Downstairs and Referendum.
Real okay. Yeah, go on.
Sorry. Hi, George Frost, Society's exec. Just, this might be me being a bit finicky, but when it says refer to the chair as Santa Baby this evening, but then come into Luther's in Santa attire with no end date, does that mean that every time he comes in, he's got to be dressed as Santa? Because I am down for that. I think that'd be great.
In all honesty, we actually discussed this at steering committee, and we decided we'd just put in what would we call it? Sorry. Yes, well, we're just going to lapse it at the beginning of the next meeting. Well, technically, yeah. You don't do things at halves at steering committee, I say. Right, any more questions? Right, thank you.
Okay. We will take two on either side of the motion. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Yep, go on.
Just extra drinks vouchers. And it is Christmas and Hanukkah and lots of things won't work for other people, so it would be rude not to. That's it.
Yeah.
Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Yes, Harris, go on.
Obviously, I am against this motion. But I have a well-reasoned argument. I'd like to bring the council's attention to resolve. Attention to resolve number 4, where it says all councillors have to have themselves a merry little Christmas. I ask, what if I want to have a very large Christmas? What if I want to have a celebration? What if I would be miserable? I believe I should have the freedom to remove myself from any sort of spectrum. And finally, as Grace kind of pointed out earlier, what if I don't celebrate Christmas? I feel being restricted to festivities, quantity, and degree of merriment.
What's that? Can we put in an amendment to change it to
I would
Merry
be
Little Holiday?
I would be willing to propose a procedural motion to put Merry Little Christmas, or however you like to celebrate. Also, secondly, I do actually feel more seriously that notes 1 and 3 should be believed, because there are actually opinions which are without any sort of factual objective.
Would anyone else like to speak? Would anyone else like to speak for the motion? Yeah, go on, Adam.
Well, actually, I'd like to rebut the argument. And in response, I would like to quote one of the greatest political writers of the 20th century. Every student down in NUSU liked Christmas a lot. The Grinch, just opposite, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knew the reason. It could be, perhaps, that his shoes were too tight. It could be, perhaps, that his head wasn't screwed on quite right. I don't like that line, so ignore it. But I think the most likely reason of all is simply because his heart was simply 2 sizes too small. But I agree with the amendment, so...
While we're waiting to receive that amendment, would anyone else like to speak against the motion? Go on, Jamie.
Yeah, so I'm not really speaking against it. Hi, I'm Chris Wilkinson, the racial equality. But like, is there something like that we have to have like snow and stuff this Christmas also? Yeah. Like, it's not. I'm not talking against it. It's just like, you know.
Point of information: there will never be snow again because of the university's investment in fossil.
Are we doing an amendment or are we not monitoring?
I'm writing as fast as my disabled hands can.
Can we put all I want for you is Christmas? All I want for Christmas is you. I don't know where I am.
Jingle bells.
Wow,
Okay.
that's so rude.
Okay. Eyes at the front. So, we have an amendment for this motion to wish all councillors to have themselves a merry little Xmas.
No, sorry. That was just right. So the difference is, instead of resolving all councillors to have, it's to wish them to have.
Okay, so the difference is to wish them to have rather than to have. Okay. Adam, would you mind standing? Would you like to accept the amendment? Okay. So that is now taken as a friendly motion, which means we can vote on it like normal. Once we put the amendment in, we can. You could all just wait for a minute. Okay, so the amendment has been added. We're going to go to a vote. It's an ordinary motion, so a simple majority is all that is required. Please make sure you're all still logged in and able to vote. If you...
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh, o'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtail ring, they make our spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle
Okay. That motion has passed. Right, okay. Moving on. Yes, there is. We have student union elections. We have 2 places on the executive committee in form of volunteer reps. Sophie, would you mind speaking on this?
This is for the volunteering exec. You have to be involved in a Go Volunteer project. I believe 2 people have put their names forward who sadly couldn't be with us here at council tonight. But if you are interested in running for election, then please do.
If you want to, please make your way to the left to put your name down. Your chance is now.
Yeah, they're on that post-it note there.
Okay. Okay. Apologies if I mispronounced his names wrong. Okay, so the 2 people who put their names forward are Ellie Mahoney and Bridget Stratford. Because these are uncontested, they can just go through with the green cards. Wave them in the air nice and clearly. So those 4. Those against. Any abstentions? Okay, and that has gone through. Now, on to student notices. This segment is only around 5 minutes long. It is, if anyone here has anything they would like to inform council about, any activities in terms of society, PTOs, sabbaticals, anything that council may find interesting, please raise your hand and speak. Go on, Raf.
So, relatively interesting one. The university are currently training for a listening campaign they're doing for the living wage. So they're looking at bringing in the living wage, which I hope everyone in this room is supportive of. I think it's obviously very important, and the university are, actually trying to do it, which is great, really great to see. And I'm involved in the meetings, and they're opening up training sessions to anyone, so staff and crucially students. They want students to attend these training sessions, where basically you learn how to, essentially go up to someone and speak to them about, get information about what they're earning and how they like to, see it differently, and their experience and their working life. And these, they can be quite awkward questions. So you'll be trained by Tyne and Weir citizens, who are sort of a charity pressure group in the city and the region, who are really fantastic. And yeah, it's an amazing cause. They've done some training sessions already. There's one next week, which might be the last one. So really, please, if you are passionate about this issue, do get involved. I am myself. Please do get involved because it's amazing. Do just email me, president.union, message me on Facebook. I can give you all the details. I believe there's one on Tuesday, the 11th of December. So do go, and it's really important. And it does matter.
Anybody else? Yeah.
So tomorrow night, the Debating Society and It Happens Here, which is the society raising awareness of sexual violence on campus, we're having a collaboration, and it's going to be a panel discussing sexual violence on campus, and hopefully it'll be more fun than that sounds. It's 6 till 8 p.m. in the Hershey Building, Lecture Theatre 3. Anyone's welcome, so please come along. It'll be really good to have a nice turnout. That's it.
Any other notices? Yep.
Emily, parent, guardian, I need a short title. So it's me again. As I mentioned earlier, we're trialling a toddler group starting in January, 4 weeks. It's going to be one session a week for now. It's going to be open to staff, postgrad and undergrad. So basically, if you've got a child, just bring them in. We need to try and get as much information as possible, just to make sure if there's a call for it, and it will help. I think it's going to be like a drop-in session as well. So there's like-minded parents, because a lot of the sort of places where you drop them, they haven't got to the team now. You haven't really got much in common with them. They're all very, they're very just. They're a lot of them are like sort of stay-at-home mums, that kind of thing, which isn't that wrong with that. But when you're stressing about exams and stuff, I don't really understand. So if you can spread the word, obviously we'll be sending out more details when times and dates are solid. But can you just spread it out to everybody you know who's a parent, a guardian, or a carer, because everybody's welcome as long as you've got a child. Okay. Thank you.
Any other notices to council? Yep.
Hi, I'm Alana. I'm on the Society's exec. Just to quickly mention, in January I am organising Holocaust Memorial Day, and we're collaborating, so I'm president of the Jewish Society, we're collaborating with the History Society, and I've organised for a guest speaker to come up and speak about their testimony. It will be a Holocaust survivor, and it will be in an evening in January. I'm just waiting to hear back from the Union of Jewish Students about which speaker we're going to have and what day it's going to be, because it just depends on their availability. But I'm going to have various different speeches and things like that, but it's going to be a really amazing event, and it's going to incorporate this guest speaker who's going to have a lot of interesting things to say and an amazing story. So I'd absolutely love as many people as possible to be able to come and be a part of the memorial with us. So I just want to let you know.
Okay. Any other notices to council? Okay, moving on. So, our final segment is the open debate. This is entitled Post-Higher Education Review, Should We Have Different Fees for Different Degrees? Johnny, if you'd like to come up and speak on that.
Hi everyone. So, going to go back a bit here, but if you remember, obviously in the 2017 general election, I think one of the key pledges from the Labour Party was to get rid of tuition fees. Obviously they weren't elected, and so that policy hasn't been implemented, but since then Theresa May has actually launched a review into higher education funding. It's known as the OGA review. That will be coming out early next year. We anticipate around February / March, and basically it's just a review of like how universities are funded. And one of the anticipated recommendations that the review will give to the government will be to charge different fees for different degrees. So for example, this could be, so the argument might be that, say, an engineering degree costs more to operate. So therefore, someone studying, say, a degree like history wouldn't have to pay as much because the costs of running the course aren't as high. So basically, the question I'm just putting to council is, do you think that is a good idea? Do you think we should have a variable degree system, or do you think we should have the same flat, maybe not £9,000, but the same flat fee for every single course?
Okay, any questions? Okay, sit down. Okay, so how this public open debate works is that anyone can speak. Please try and keep your speeches to about 15 seconds. Please make yourself loud and clear. You can speak on any side of the motion. We won't stick to the normal format of for or against. You can speak after, if you're for, someone who said for, and against center, but that format doesn't necessarily apply. So if you'd like to open the debate, please just put your hand up. Okay, yep, at the back, right at the back.
I'm Scott Wallen. I think obviously we'd all like it if there was no fees, but I think by charging different amounts of different degrees, you're inherently saying that some degrees are worth more than others. And I just think that's absolutely not true. I think every degree has its value for whatever that person wants to do. It's got value because that's what they want to study. It's got value because it might give them like a place to work. I don't think that charging different amounts of different degrees is a good idea, basically, just because, like I already said, it just means that inherently you're valuing some degrees more highly than others.
Yeah, I'd echo and elaborate on that. I think if you're charging £6,500 for history students and £13,000 for engineering students, what you do, same with like medics as well, what you do is you immediately discourage people from WP backgrounds going into medicine, engineering, which are usually, particularly like engineering, in industries that are male posh dominated, and just by having different course fees, it really means that people from poor backgrounds are just not even going to consider going into medicine or engineering when there is an option available to them which is half the price, and they still get a degree. And I just think it's a massively bad decision. I really hope they don't do it.
So as we said, this will go on for 10 minutes, just so you know in terms of timing, but yeah.
Okay, Courtney Levin. I think what's interesting about this is that when the tuition fees were raised, the cap was raised to 9,000, it was done under the pretense that like universities would not all go to 9,000, that some of them would tier differently, and like universities that weren't as highly ranked, and of course that didn't happen, everyone just whacked straight up to 9,000. So what's to say this isn't used as an excuse to just whack the tuition fee cap up and then every course just goes up?
I mean, I think it's what was interesting, how tuition fees were implemented in the first place. I mean, essentially it functions as a tax on your income, but the point isn't to actually make you pay the fee for your tuition any differently. It's to make you think that you are a consumer of education, you are buying a product or a service, thinking of yourself as a customer. That's the point. And I worry that going even further down this rabbit hole, should we have different fees for different degrees, we're just marketizing our view of education further, when really education should always be a right for all of any age group or any background. And I think that's the basis of which, you know, our education policies should be platformed on free education, not marketized education.
Yeah, I would just echo what Jamie said. I don't think it's controversial to say we don't want to become like America in this instance, or in many others. But we see students in America when they go to higher education coming out quite commonly with £80,000+ in debt, more for sciencey degrees, oh gosh, you can tell I'm not a science major. And then it just ends up putting students in a lot of debt. The way that it works now, as Jamie said, where it becomes basically a tax on your income, and then it cuts off at 50 anyway, means that education is so much more accessible because there is like an end point to the horizon for debt. Like, even though, like, I'm doing a 4-year degree, my debt's going to be quite high. I know that it's going to stay at that manageable amount, whereas I would be very, very nervous if they change this in some way. And then also with what Scarlett said about you are inherently devaluing some degrees. Whether or not, I don't think necessarily it's that like we as classic students would see our degree as like not as valuable, but it's what society thinks of that degree and society thinks of your qualification, when actually, arguably, I think quite reasonably, the degrees are hard in different ways, but equally hard. That's why they're both bachelors, and that's why they're both masters, blah, blah. So, yeah, we don't want to be America. Let's not do this.
George Ross, Science Exec. Kind of to follow on from what Raf and from what Scarlett said, I do think that charging different, like, it'll end up, at least from the way I'm seeing it, it'll end up being STEM subjects and then being charged more, which will also lead to less people choosing it, which will then lead to less people graduating that, which will lead to a greater shortage of people working in the NHS or people working as engineers. But then further, for bachelors, obviously it'll change on that, but then do they charge more for masters, which leads us to get fewer people in specialised subjects? I think it's just got a lot of further kind of implications on kind of, I don't want to say higher than higher education, but like postgraduate stuff. It'll make that a whole mess.
Hi. I'm not sure how relevant this is, but I think I agree on the idea that STEM subjects will be the ones that become more expensive, and I think there's always been this sort of traditional culture of STEM subjects as so much better than arts subjects or whatever, and I think this will just end up reinforcing that side of us versus them mindset in terms of degrees. Like, I do STEM, and the amount of people who are just like, haha, people doing arts degrees, and I'm just like, shut up, sir. So I don't want to be like, haha, my degree's worth more than yours monetarily, like I can afford it, you can't, haha. I think it'll just be bad in many ways. I don't like it.
I think it's interesting to look at this from the government's perspective. As we've said many times, a lot of people either don't pay back the full or don't pay back anywhere near the amount that the government gives out. And from the government's perspective, it's actually quite a smart idea because it means that they can give less. If they don't increase a higher tier and they keep the maximum tier at 9,000 and they increase lower tiers, from their perspective, they're giving money out to people they're giving less money to people who would never have paid them back in the first place, which means they have more money to do other things with. So although it may have negative consequences for students and separation and culture, from the government's perspective, it actually might be a smart idea to introduce something like this, where they're actually saving money in the short term especially, and they won't have to hope they see that money back in the future.
I'd like to say, especially on because we've said that STEM would probably be the most affected in terms of increasing costs. There's already a lot of inequality within STEM, like Raf said, especially with engineering and medicine, obviously, but within all sciences, the majority of STEM subjects are dominated by people of a higher class and by people who are, male, and there's also racial differences within it to do with how people are encouraged to do things. And I think it would just perpetuate inequality and also, just create a greater hold of what capitalism has over our education. And as Cameron said, that's not a good thing.
Yeah. Right at that.
Scarlett. I'd like to speak against a point that was made earlier about making some degrees cheaper would make it better for the government. If that was really how they were thinking, they'd make all degrees free because they wouldn't have to give out money to anybody and it would just be all fine. So I don't think that really makes sense.
Basically, just reiterating the point that Raf made, I'm doing a course that up until the year I started was funded by the NHS, so I've got another £40,000 to pay back in theory, and I know they said we're not going to pay it back, but I've still got that debt, and I think that stops a lot of people like me who aren't from posh backgrounds, and I'm very working class, and I think it would put a lot of people off like me from coming back, especially as a mature student. So I think a lot of STEM subjects already, I've already had extra pressure put on them by having bursaries and all that kind of thing cut, that this is just going to be another nail in the coffin for people like me.
George Frost again. Just sorry, what you said there kind of made me think as well about what Grace said with the debt being cancelled at 50 because student debt's cancelled after 30 years. But with mature students starting university at a later date, potentially when they're older, that debt wouldn't finish when they're 50, it would carry on potentially past their age of retirement. So if there is a varying instruction degrees where the cost can be potentially much higher, that has so much more effects for mature students and postgrads and that, which, especially coming with our new postgraduate sabbatical officer, I think it's really not what we're standing for as an SU. So I think we should fight against that.
Anybody else?
Hi, Sophie. I'm going to have a go at arguing the other side, even though it's not what I believe because it's a debate. I think that the reason why it would be good is, for example, if I was to go to a restaurant with my friend and we were to order 2 different plates of food and their food was costing a lot for the restaurant to supply and buy in and make, something that costs a lot for them, versus my meal, which probably doesn't cost as much, but kind of we get the same sort of outcome and employability, outcome, we both get full. I don't know why we should have to pay the same amount for that and then they get topped up by the government anyway. It doesn't so they get covered by the restaurant essentially. So if you wouldn't, I understand this is about capitalism and consumerism and I see myself as a customer, but if you wouldn't expect to do that in a restaurant, then why would you expect that in your education? And in addition, I think the way the tax works, it is a tax, it's not a debt, it doesn't go on your credit score or anything, and when the £9,000 came in, we didn't actually see a massive drop in people going to university. So yeah, with that.
What have you done?
I'm just going to play devil's advocate really briefly as well. So essentially, when obviously everyone pays tuition fees, they're high, they're far too high. They all go into a pot, and then you can envisage it split into 3 faculties. You've got HAS, FMS, and SAGE. And the way the money is spent, that tuition fee income block is spent on the different faculties will be different for each faculty, and then again into each of the faculties as well. It will be on teaching consumables, on salaries, on resources, loads of different things. So there is disparities in the sort of the money that's spent on different courses and inside the different faculties. So arguably, if this did happen, would this not be value for money?
Okay, that's all we have time for.
Yeah.
Sorry, but I did say 10 minutes. Call that discussion to a close. Right, all we have left is to do the raffle. Have your raffle tickets at the ready. We have 3 vouchers in front of me. How much are they worth? We have 3 £10 vouchers for the lucky winners to take home. And the first winner is 417. If you come to the front. There you go, enjoy it. Okay, and the second one is 422. Come to the front. Yep, just pass the ticket. There you go. The third and final one is 413.
Yes!
Congratulations, there you go. Okay. I'd like to thank you all for coming. Just a quick reminder, the motion deadline for next council is the 1st of December, and next council will be on the 14th, 1st of February rather, my apologies. And next council will be the 14th of February. Thank you all for coming. Have a very Merry Christmas.
It's the whole section on the agenda.